The sound that ripped through my house that morning was a scream of pure agony, and it came from my daughter. I ran into her room to find her completely bald, her beautiful blonde hair scattered like a funeral shroud on her pillow. Prom was in 8 hours. But this wasn't just a cruel prank. It was a desperate act by her little sister, an act that would unravel a horrifying secret about her boyfriend, and a plan so vile it would bring our family to its knees. The night my younger daughter shaved her older sister's head while she slept wasn't an act of malice. It was an act of war, and it turned out to be the single most heroic thing she had ever done. It began with a sound that no parent ever wants to hear, a scream that wasn't just teenage melodrama but a raw, piercing cry of absolute horror. It was my eldest, Kayla, and the sound tore through the Saturday morning stillness, pulling me from the dregs of sleep into a state of immediate, heart-pounding panic. I threw back the covers and sprinted down the hallway to her bedroom, my mind racing through 1,000 terrible possibilities. Had she fallen? Was there an intruder? The reality I found was somehow more surreal and shocking. Kayla was standing in the middle of her room, her hands clamped to her head, her body trembling. But it was her head that made my own breath catch in my throat. She was completely bald. Her long, honey blonde hair, the hair she spent hours styling, the hair that was her pride and joy, was gone. In its place was a pale, vulnerable scalp, with sheared tufts scattered like fallen leaves across her pillowcase and the floor. She was sobbing uncontrollably, her words choked and fractured, but I pieced them together. Her little sister, Ree, had done this. She must have snuck in with the electric razor while Kayla was sleeping. My daughter, my vibrant, confident 17-year-old, stumbled toward her bathroom mirror, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, as if in a nightmare. The reflection that met her eyes only amplified the horror, and a fresh wave of screams, louder and more desperate this time, echoed through the house. Her prom, the pinnacle of her high school social life, was in a mere 8 hours. She was a shoo-in for prom queen, the girl everyone admired. Now, in her eyes, everything was utterly, irrevocably ruined. "Where is Reese?" I demanded, my voice a low growl that barely contained my own burgeoning fury. My husband, Mark, who had followed me out of our room, found her. Ree was sitting calmly on her own bed, still clad in her pink unicorn pajamas, looking small and innocent. On her nightstand, next to a half-finished glass of water, sat my husband's electric razor. "Ree, what did you do?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice level as Kayla's heartbroken sobs continued to pour from the adjoining bathroom. My youngest daughter looked up at me, her expression a strange mixture of guilt and unwavering conviction. "I had to stop her from going to prom," she said, her voice small and quiet, the one she always used when she knew she was in deep trouble but was utterly convinced of the righteousness of her actions. My mind struggled to reconcile the image before me with the child I knew. This was my baby, my 8-year-old, who still crawled into Kayla's bed for comfort during thunderstorms. This was the same little girl who, just last summer, had learned to ride a bike with Kayla patiently running alongside her, holding the seat steady. Ree was Kayla's shadow, her most ardent admirer, following her big sister everywhere, a constant stream of questions about makeup, boys, and high school life. The idea that she would deliberately and cruelly sabotage her sister's most anticipated night was unthinkable. Before I could formulate a response, before I could begin to process the sheer magnitude of this betrayal, the doorbell chimed. Kayla's boyfriend, Steven, let himself in with the casual familiarity of a family member. It was his Saturday morning routine. We heard him bounding up the stairs, his voice cheerful. "Hey, we need to decide on corsage colors, I was thinking." He stopped dead in the hallway, his words dying in his throat as his eyes landed on Kayla's bald head. "What the hell happened to your hair?" he blurted out, his initial shock unmasked. He quickly composed himself, his features shifting into a mask of practiced concern. "Baby, don't cry," he said, stepping into the bathroom and pulling her into his arms. "We can fix this. We can get you a beautiful wig. You'll still be the prettiest girl there, I promise." His words, meant to be soothing, only made Kayla cry harder, her body shaking against his. Steven held her, but his eyes, when they met mine over her shoulder, were filled with accusation, a glare that seemed to place this entire bizarre catastrophe squarely on my shoulders. "Did Reese do this?" he asked, his voice laced with contempt. "I always said that kid was weird. This is assault, Mrs. Adams. You know that, right?" Just then, Reese appeared in the bathroom doorway, a tiny, defiant figure in her unicorn pajamas. "I cut off all her hair, so she couldn't go to prom with you," she announced, her voice clear and steady. "Because you're mean to her." "Reese." I yelled, the name exploding from my lips, but she was undeterred, a miniature warrior on a mission. She pointed a small finger at Stephen. "You hurt my sister all the time. I see the purple marks on your arms where you grab her too hard." The bathroom, which had been filled with the sounds of crying and accusations, fell deathly silent. Stephen let out a short, forced laugh. "Kids make up the craziest stories, Mrs. Adams," he said, his eyes flicking nervously between me and my husband. He gave Kayla a little shake. "Tell her, Kayla. Tell your mom how good I am to you." But Kayla wouldn't look at anyone. She just kept her face buried in his chest, her shoulders trembling. A cold, dreadful feeling began to spread through my veins, an icy premonition that we were standing on the edge of a chasm far deeper and darker than a ruined prom night. "I took pictures on Mommy's phone," Ree said, her voice gaining strength, her conviction solidifying. "When Kayla was sleeping, you push her into the walls. You hit her on her tummy, where nobody can see. And then you buy her presents afterward, so she won't tell you." With shaking hands, I pulled my phone from my robe pocket. My fingers felt clumsy and numb as I navigated to the photo gallery. And there they were. A series of recent photos I didn't remember taking. They were close-ups, grainy in the low light of Kayla's bedroom. One showed Kayla's upper arm, marred with distinct, finger-shaped bruises. Another showed a constellation of dark purple and sickening yellow marks across her ribs. The world tilted on its axis. "Oh my God," I whispered, the words a faint puff of air. I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, vibrant daughter, and saw her for the first time not as a teenager, but as a victim. "Kayla, is this true?" Stephen's face was turning a blotchy red. "Those could be from anything. She plays volleyball. This is insane. I've spent hundreds of dollars on her. I'm taking her to prom in a limousine." My husband, Mark, moved from the hallway to stand beside me, his entire body radiating a tense, coiled energy as he looked over my shoulder at the damning images on my phone. "Kayla, baby, why didn't you tell us?" he asked, his voice cracking with a pain that mirrored my own. Stephen's grip on Kayla's arm tightened, a possessive, controlling gesture that suddenly looked sinister. "We're leaving. Right now," he declared, trying to pull her toward the door. "This is completely ridiculous. Get dressed, Kayla." "She can't go anywhere if she's too embarrassed about her hair," Ree stated, her logic simple and devastatingly effective. "That's why I shaved it all off. So she'd have to stay home where she's safe." Stephen, realizing his aggression wasn't working, abruptly switched tactics. His voice became syrupy sweet, a predatory purr. "Ree, honey, sometimes me and Kayla, we play a little rough. You know, when we're fooling around. It's not abuse, it's just passion. You're too young to understand boyfriend-girlfriend stuff." It was the most disgusting thing I had ever heard. My husband stepped fully into the bathroom, his large frame blocking the doorway. "Let go of my daughter," he said, his voice low and dangerous.
"Now."
"But then you did this, mister," Reese said, and every eye in the room swiveled back to her. She held up her little pink tape recorder, the one she used to create her imaginary radio shows. She pressed the play button. A tinny, but clear, recording of Stephen's voice filled the small room. Ree explained that she had recorded it yesterday when he was waiting in our living room for Kayla to get ready for a date. "Yeah, tomorrow night, after prom," his recorded voice bragged, full of arrogant confidence. "I'm gonna get her completely wasted at Jake's after party and make sure she can't say no this time. I already got the stuff to put in her drink from my brother. Time to lock that down before college. You know, nothing keeps a girl around like getting her pregnant." The air in the room became thick and unbreathable. I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I thought I was going to be sick right there on the bathroom tiles. Kayla made a horrible, wounded sound, a strangled gasp of betrayal and pain. She finally tried to pull away from Stephen, struggling against his grip, but he held on even tighter. "That's fake," Stephen stammered, beads of sweat now trickling down his temples. "You're all crazy. That's not even my voice. This whole family is insane. You are going to put something in my daughter's drink?" I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage so profound it felt like a physical force. "You are going to salt my baby?" Stephen finally released Kayla, shoving her away from him. He started backing toward the door, his eyes wide with panic, but my husband moved faster, blocking the only exit. I could see the muscles in Mark's jaw clenching and unclenching as he stared down the boy who had been systematically hurting our child right under our noses. "You don't want to do this," Stephen said, attempting a threatening tone that was completely undermined by the crack in his voice. He was just a boy, a scared, pathetic boy. "My dad's a lawyer. You touch me, and I'll ruin your whole family." Mark took another menacing step forward. Stephen pressed himself flat against the wall, his eyes darting around for an escape route that didn't exist. But then, a sudden, chilling transformation came over him. The panic vanished, replaced by a cold, reptilian confidence. He looked my husband directly in the eye and said, in a voice that was pure ice, "I really don't think you want to do that, Mr. Adams. And I think you know exactly why." The effect on my husband was instantaneous and terrifying. The color drained from his face, leaving his skin a pasty, grayish white. A visible tremor started in his hands. Stephen just stood there, a smug, triumphant smirk spreading across his face. I saw my husband's entire body go rigid with a fear I had never seen in him before. Stephen knew something, a secret weapon, and whatever it was, it had just disarmed my strong, protective husband. The bathroom felt claustrophobic, the air charged with unspoken threats. In the suffocating silence, I could hear Kayla's ragged, shallow breaths behind me. Mark took an involuntary step backward, and Stephen's smirk widened into a grin. That's when my own fear coalesced into a cold, hard diamond of fury. I pushed myself between them, my own phone held high. My fingers were shaking, but I managed to hit the video record button, holding the phone up so Stephen could see the blinking red light. "Get out of our house," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Get out right now, or I am calling 911. Stephen just laughed, a sound full of arrogant dismissal. "My dad will destroy you for this. You have no idea who you're messing with," he spat. He then shoved past my husband, slamming Mark's shoulder hard enough to make him stumble into the wall. I kept the phone recording as Stephen stomped down the stairs, his rage performative and destructive. We heard him deliberately knock our framed family photos from the hallway wall, the sound of shattering glass echoing his contempt. Mark followed him down as I stayed with the girls, who were now both crying, huddled together. Stephen's voice, full of threats about lawyers and lawsuits, carried up the stairs before the front door slammed with enough force to shake the entire house. The roar of his sports car's engine, followed by the squeal of tires as he peeled out of our driveway, was the final punctuation mark on the morning's horror. Mark returned upstairs, his face still ashen. He looked at the three of us, a tableau of shock and trauma in the wreckage of our bathroom, and said his voice was hollow. "We need to talk." In our room. We filed down the hallway like soldiers in retreat. In the master bedroom, Mark locked the door behind us. Kayla sat on the edge of the bed, her bald head catching the morning light, looking impossibly small and fragile. Ree, her self-appointed guardian, climbed up beside her and took her hand. I turned to my husband. "What does he have on you, Mark? What was that about?" He sank onto the bed, burying his face in his hands. After a long, heavy silence, he looked up, his eyes filled with shame. He told us that 2 weeks ago, he'd noticed faint bruises on Kayla's wrist at the dinner table. The next day, consumed by a protective rage, he had gone to the school to confront Stephen. He found him in the parking lot after baseball practice, grabbed him by the shirt, and slammed him against his car. Mark admitted he'd threatened to kill Stephen if he ever laid a hand on Kayla again. And Stephen, ever the cunning manipulator, had recorded the entire exchange on his phone, including the explicit threat. He had played the video for Mark right then and there, telling him that if he ever interfered in his and Kayla's relationship again, he would send the recording to the police and press felony assault charges. The pieces clicked into place, forming a sickening picture of blackmail and intimidation. The fear in my chest was now laced with a white-hot anger at my husband for keeping this from me, but that was a battle for another time. "We have to call the police," I said, my voice firm.
"Right now."
"About all of it. The abuse, the recording, the threats." Mark nodded, his face a mask of misery. "I know. I'm worried about that video. His father really is a lawyer, a powerful one." Kayla's sobs intensified. "I don't want you to get in trouble because of me, Dad," she cried. "This is all my fault. I never should have dated him." Ree, my tiny, wise old soul, crawled into her sister's lap, wrapping her small arms around Kayla's neck. "It's not your fault," she said, her voice firm with a certainty that belied her years. "Bad people do bad things. That's on them. It's never on the people they hurt. That was it. That was the moment my own resolve hardened. I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line, my family a huddled, broken unit on the bed behind me. When the dispatcher answered, I explained that I needed to report ongoing domestic violence and a planned sexual assault. My voice shook as I relayed the details, the bruises, the text messages, and the chilling audio recording of a boy plotting to drug and rape my daughter. The dispatcher assured me an officer would be dispatched immediately and advised us to lock our doors and stay inside. While we waited in the tense silence, I asked Kayla for her phone. With trembling fingers, she unlocked it and handed it to me. I scrolled back through months of her text exchanges with Steven, and a new layer of horror unfolded. It was a textbook on coercive control. Messages dictating what she could wear, who she was allowed to speak to. Vicious, cutting remarks followed by saccharine apologies that always managed to twist the blame back onto her. Threats about what he would do, the social ruin he would inflict if she ever dared to leave him. One message made my blood run cold. They're mine, and you better not forget it. There were hundreds of them. I began methodically taking screenshots of every single one, sending them to my own phone to create a separate file of evidence. Kayla watched, tears streaming silently down her face, murmuring apologies as if she were the one who had done something wrong. Mark pulled her into a hug, whispering that she had nothing to be sorry for, that we were the ones who should have seen the signs, who should have protected her. I tried to tell you, Ree piped up from the bed. I told you he was mean. But you just thought I was jealous that he got all of Kayla's attention. The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. She had tried, in her own 8-year-old way, and we had dismissed her. I turned back to Kayla, my voice gentle. I need to take pictures of all the bruises now for the police. She nodded numbly and lifted her shirt. The dark, ugly marks across her ribs were a visceral testament to his violence. My hands shook as I documented each one, the camera's click sounding obscenely loud in the quiet room. When 2 uniformed officers arrived 20 minutes later, I led them upstairs. I played Ree's recording first. The younger officer's face hardened into a grim mask as he listened to Steven's cavalier plotting. They took notes as Kayla, with quiet dignity, showed them the bruises, and as I scrolled through the endless stream of controlling, threatening text messages. Recognizing the severity of the situation, they immediately called for a detective. Detective Nora Gomez arrived within the hour. She had a calm, no-nonsense demeanor that was instantly reassuring. She explained that she specialized in domestic violence and crimes against children, and that she would need to interview each of us separately. She started with Kayla, taking her back to her bedroom for privacy. It was a long hour, filled with the low murmur of their voices. When it was my turn, I presented her with our arsenal of evidence, the audio recording, the screenshots, the photos of the bruises. She examined each piece meticulously, her expression becoming increasingly grim. You did exactly the right thing, she said. Documenting everything and calling us immediately gives us a very strong foundation. When she interviewed Ree, my little girl sat up straight and recounted her story with a solemn clarity, explaining that shaving Kayla's head was a desperate act of protection. The detective listened intently, and then she smiled, a small but genuine smile. You are a very brave girl, she told Ree. You did what you thought you had to do to protect your sister. Before leaving, Detective Gomez strongly recommended we take Kayla to the emergency room to have her injuries professionally documented. We drove to the hospital in a daze. In the sterile, impersonal environment of the ER, a female doctor gently examined Kayla, measuring and photographing each of the 17 separate bruises they found in various stages of healing. The process was humiliating and painful, but Kayla endured it with a quiet strength that broke my heart. A social worker provided us with resources and explained the hospital's mandatory reporting duties. As we were signing the discharge papers, my husband's phone rang. It was Julian Franks, Steven's father. Mark put the call on speakerphone. Julian's voice, loud and belligerent, boomed from the small device, filled with threats of lawsuits for defamation and false accusations. The social worker's eyes widened, and she discreetly began recording the call on her own phone as Julian's tirade continued. Mark calmly stated that we were at the hospital documenting the results of his son's abuse, and then hung up. The social worker promised to add her recording to the official report as evidence of witness intimidation. The nightmare was far from over. When we turned onto our street, we saw Steven's black car parked across from our house, a silent, menacing presence. I immediately called Detective Gomez, who instructed us to drive to a safe location while she dispatched a patrol car. 10 minutes later, she called back to say it was safe to return. We arrived to find 2 police cars boxing in Steven's vehicle. He was issued a formal warning to stay away from our property and our family. The incident was photographed and added to the rapidly growing case file. That evening, we received a call from Maddie Coleman, a counselor from Kayla's school. She had heard what happened and offered to arrange for Kayla's schoolwork to be sent home. An hour later, Detective Gomez called with another update. She had interviewed Jake, the friend whose house was the planned site of the after-party. A terrified Jake had admitted that Steven had asked him to make sure Kayla's drinks were extra strong and had bragged about getting something special from his older brother to put in them. The brother, Tyson, had a record of his own for selling prescription pills. A warrant was now being issued for Steven's car and phone. The next days were a whirlwind of official proceedings. A CPS worker conducted a home visit and, after interviewing us all, concluded that we were a supportive family and that Ree's actions, while extreme, were born of a fierce, protective love. A victim advocate named Tabitha Wise contacted us and helped us file for an emergency protective order, armed with our mountain of evidence. The day after a certified letter full of legal threats arrived from Julian Frank's law office, Detective Gomez executed the search warrant. Under the driver's seat of Steven's car, they found a small plastic baggie. Inside were pills that were sent for immediate testing but were preliminarily identified as Rohypnol. Within hours, Steven was arrested at his home, charged with possession of a controlled substance and conspiracy to commit sexual assault. His father bailed him out, but the legal machine was now in motion. In a courtroom hearing a few days later, a judge listened to Ree's recording, reviewed the evidence, and granted the protective order without hesitation, legally barring Steven from coming within 500 feet of Kayla. The school followed suit, suspending him indefinitely and banning him from all school property. The healing process was slow and painful. Kayla began seeing a therapist who specialized in teen dating violence. Our entire family started therapy together to learn how to communicate and support each other through the trauma. Ree, burdened by guilt over her drastic actions, started her own therapy and began volunteering at a local domestic violence shelter, channeling her protective instincts into positive action. Steven, unable to follow even court-ordered rules, repeatedly violated the protective order by sending his friends to pass messages to Kayla at school. Each violation was meticulously documented and reported, painting a clear picture of his inability to respect boundaries. 6 months after that terrible morning, the criminal trial began. Steven's high-powered legal team tried to portray him as a good kid who made a mistake, but the evidence was overwhelming. When Kayla took the stand, she wore her prom dress, a symbol of what he had tried to take from her. She spoke with a clear, strong voice about the abuse. Then Ree, in her little pink unicorn dress, took the stand, and the courtroom listened in stunned silence to the tape recording of Steven's vile plan. After 3 days of testimony, the jury returned a verdict, guilty on all major charges. At his sentencing, Steven was given 2 years in juvenile detention, followed by 3 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order. In the aftermath, a profound shift occurred. With Steven gone, Kayla began to reclaim her life. She started a peer support group at her school, sharing her story to help others recognize the warning signs of abuse. Her hair began to grow back, and she eventually embraced a chic, short pixie cut, a reminder of her survival and her sister's love. Our family, fractured by trauma, slowly began to knit itself back together, our bonds forged stronger in the fire. Kayla graduated as salutatorian, her speech a powerful testament to resilience and the courage it takes to ask for help. She chose a college 3 hours away, a place where she could build a new, independent life, supported by a family that had learned the hardest way imaginable how to truly see and protect one another. Looking back, that shocking act of a little girl with an electric razor was not the beginning of our family's destruction, but the beginning of its salvation. It was a brutal, desperate, and ultimately beautiful act of love that saved my daughter's life.